I'm Brad Leavitt, president of AFT Construction. Welcome to our YouTube channel today. And if you're into architecture, design, construction, or even owning a small business, this is the channel for you. So make sure and hit that subscribe because we're going to be giving out a lot of information to help your business. We have been asked on a percentage of the house, what percentage is material and what percentage is labor? And that's a great question because we've never actually done the final calculation on a home and, as far as a total percentage, but let's speak about some of the specifics because it really varies by trade. It varies by scope of work. And so you think about framing, for example. So on a home like we're at right now at frame stage, a majority of the cost is lumber and trusses and hardware. And then a small percentage is labor. And some people think of it a third, a third, a third. Well, in some instances that's right. I mean, lumber's on the high right now. So between the lumber package, the hardware and trusses, you're typically about 60% of that line item over historical data has been the cost of the lumber material, and then 40% labor. And the reason being is, you see a project such as this on this size home. I mean, our framers are going to be out here, full-size crews on this big of a home. They're going to be out here for 3 months working, and there's a lot of labor costs, especially with framing, because with framing, you deal with high numbers, for workers' comp and OSHA protection and things of that matter, where it's actually more workers' comp because the chances of those workers being hurt on site and having a worker comp claim are much higher, and so they have a different rate for that. And so that does affect the labor rate, the hourly rate, and what you're going to pay someone. So on that side, you're probably doing 40%. Now look at masonry. Masonry, again, we do a lot of masonry. We have a lot of retaining walls, a lot of site work. Well, the masonry itself, the block, is not super expensive. So when you're looking out here, you have the block itself, not very costly, but there's a lot of labor, a lot of trip charges for the manpower to come out and set the block. And some cases, this is going to be solid grout, which means you're going to fill it with concrete. And then there is some cost in the concrete. But again, a lot of it is labor driven. And then, with some of the other finishes, such as appliances, you look at appliances, well, that's going to swing the pendulum the complete other way. You're going to have 97% of your appliance line is the product itself. It's the appliances, it's the range, it's the microwave, the hood, the dishwasher, all these components are the line, whereas the install is typically maybe 2%, maybe 3%. And you definitely want a good qualified installer, especially if you're doing built-in appliances. So that's where you see that variation. Some of these lines are maybe more 50-50, depending on what it entails. Again, looking at drywall. Drywall is very labor-driven, so the cost of drywall, the cost of mud, tape and texture, that's not super expensive. However, the labor, when they're in there for 3 weeks or 4 weeks to install the drywall, to come in and clean it up, and then do all the corner bead, and all the seams, and then tape and texture, and especially in our homes where we're typically a very clean square corner. Almost all of our homes are perfectly square, and then all the walls are a 95/5 or a level 5. And the difference there, 95/5 gives some variance, so 95% of the wall is completely smooth and 5% has some inconsistency or texture to it, whereas a level 5 is at a whole nother level, right, of finish. But you think of how much mud, even though mud's not expensive, there's a lot of labor to apply that and sand it and then get it at that level. So labor on drywall is very expensive. So that's why when you're looking at a house, there are a lot of variations. It's really scope by scope, depending on how much time it takes to install that. You look at plumbing, for us, the plumbing fixture line itself is a hard cost, whether it's purchased through us or the designer to the client. But the plumbing line itself is mostly labor. Again, you're going to have PEX lines. A lot of our homes have PEX, PVC, fire sprinklers that way. It's not very expensive product, but the labor to come out and the multiple trips. Plumber on a custom home such as this, they're not making 2 trips, they're gonna make 18 trips. And part of that's because we have complicated installs, we have floating vanities, we have wall mount fixtures, we have undermount, and so there's a lot of different trips they have to come, especially as they're setting toilets at certain stages of construction. They can't set them all at once, and that's typically due to the design of the home, and they have to factor in all those trips. So that's important to understand why certain costs can vary on a project. It really depends on the final design. It depends on all the materials you're using, and that'll dictate that percentage.